We are going to get to Morning Date in just a moment, but we have a very special treat for our listeners today, and I want to show you on Poinan Radio right now. If we can get the camera zoomed in, you can see what we are giving away. We are giving away autographed books from Professor Ngugi Wa Thiong'o, and this book, the Korean title is Hantore Miral, and if you open the book, if I open the cover, you can see that these are autographed copies of the book. So get your messages coming in right now. And right now, we begin Morning Date. Morning Date. Welcome to another edition of Morning Date, a segment where I get to sit and chat with outstanding figures from all fields and all walks of life. And if the term outstanding figure has ever been truer, I don't know when that would be. Today I have the privilege of sitting down with Mr. Ngugi Wa Thiong'o, one of the most renowned literary minds of our times, winner of the 2016 Pak Kyung-ni Prize, and for many years a favorite to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, including this year. Sir, it's such an honor for us to have you for Morning Special and as my guest for Morning Date. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So could you briefly introduce yourself to our listening audience, please?
You know, first of all, as you are told, my name, and by the way, I think you pronounced it very correctly.
Oh, thank you very much. I was worried about that.
Yeah, Ngugi Wa Thiong'o. It simply means Ngugi, son of Thiong'o. You know, I was born in Kenya in 1938. Kenya was a British settler colony. So I grew up under the shadow of wars. First of all, Second World War, and also our own war against the British colonial state, the one which was led by the Mao. I mention this because all that experience has really impacted my life as a person and also as a writer.
You were born in Kenya, but you studied in the UK. Tell us about that time in your life.
No, actually, yes, most of my education was in Africa. First of all in Kenya, throughout my elementary and secondary schooling. But for my college education, I went to the neighboring territory of Uganda at Makerere University College. Then it was part overseas college of the University of London, but still it was definitely in an African country.
I understand.
In fact, I might say I started writing when I was in Africa. And my first two books were written when I was a student in Uganda. Yeah.
When did you know that you wanted to use literature as your creative outlet?
As early as I can remember, in terms of desiring stories. In my book, Dreams in a Time of War, I've talked a great deal about storytelling in my life. Dreams in a Time of War is my first memoir of my own childhood. So storytelling on our own house was very, very, very important. Now I can guess because there were no other means of entertainment in the evening. There was no television, no radio.
So it was a common part of
really,
culture.
It was part of the culture, of the period. And I remember, but there was one problem that they told us the stories could not be told in the evening, in the daytime, that they escaped in daytime. And they only came back when people had done their work and the day was over, and now in the evening they came back. The problem was I wanted to hear those stories even in daytime. So for me, it was a big moment when I learned to read and write, and I was able to read books. So ever since I learned to read and write and read books, I'd always felt I wanted to tell stories. but I was not very good at orally transmitting stories. So writing was a natural alternative. Yeah.
You are the recipient of this year's Pak Kyung-ni Prize, an award in its sixth installment. It was established in 2011 in honor of Pak Kyung-ni, the author of Toji. So the prize is arguably the primary international literary award in Korea. It comes with a huge cash prize, of course, one of the largest in the world. So when you received notice of being the winner this year, where were you when you got that news?
No, I was, exactly, I teach, I'm a distinguished professor at the University of California, Irvine, and that's when I first got news from Toj Cultural Center, I believe. And I have to admit that I did not know about the writer.
Right.
And so the first thing I did was to go to the internet to look her up. And I was, of course, very impressed, not only about the fact of having written the novel, Toji, but also the fact that she spent so many years, doing it, tremendous act of devotion. But there was something else also I learned, that she was also the mother-in-law of Kim Ji-ha, a writer whose work I had interacted with and which had a very big impact on my own life.
So you did have some knowledge of Korean literature before learning about this prize.
Oh, yes. I was very much... not Korean literature in general, but specifically, I would say, the work of Kim Ji-ha. I first came across Kim Ji-ha's work in a little bookshop in Tokyo, next to my hotel. It was in June 1976, I believe. There was a conference, International Emergencies, something conference on democracy and Korean reunification, organized by some Japanese supporters of the unity and democracy movement. And I was a participant in that one. But the book, Cry of the People, would later become very, very important when I took it back in Kenya and introduced the poetry to my own students at the University of Nairobi, where I was chairperson of the literature department. It became very popular, particularly his poem, Groundless Rumors. This partly because rumors in Kenya were also banned.
Right.
Were being banned at the same time, so it was a very sort of, it spoke directly to Kenyans in a very special way. But then I had also come into contact with his poem, The Five Bandits, kind of narrative poem. And when later that year, December 1977, I was also arrested and put in a maximum security prison. That narrative poem came back to my mind, especially when I started thinking of the language question in Africa and the domination of African languages by those of Europe. And I decided to abandon English as a vehicle of my creative writing, and I would start writing seriously in my mother tongue, Gikuyu. The novel which I started, Devil on the Cross, its plot outline, or the idea, was very much impacted by Kim Ji-ha's, The Five Bandits.
When you were incarcerated, you wrote a book on toilet paper.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. Devil on the Cross, or Shaitan Mudarafaini. As I said, impacted by the Five Bandits by Kim GR. What was important for me during that period of my life was not only did I write that book on toilet paper, which later would become the first modern literary work, or rather novel, in the Gikuyu language. So it becomes almost a founding text of modern Gikuyu language literature, you know. But I also started thinking about the language question seriously. So that period of my life, thinking about the five bandits, writing them on the cross, thinking about language, has later come to impact my later intellectual and literary activities.
How so?
Up to now. You know, because the language question becomes very important. I realize it's not simply an African problem of me and Europe, but actually is a question of inequality of power between languages.
More coming up on Morning Date, but first a little music from Kenya. Here is Ted Kalinda, Jambo Jambo. Continuing on now, my conversation with Professor Ngugi Wa Thiong'o. Congratulations on the nomination for the Nobel Prize for Literature once again, a favorite once again. And no black African writer has won the prize since 1986. I believe the last writer was from Nigeria, correct?
Yeah, Wole Soyinka, yeah.
So how did you feel at this year's announcement? Because it went to Bob Dylan this year, right?
Yeah, to a great musician. He's a great musician.
Yeah. What did you think, though, as a writer? Because a lot of people were very surprised by it.
Well, it is surprising, but I mean, I don't, you know, quite frankly, I'm not in the mind of the Swedish committee.
Right.
I don't know what was going, you know, in their minds, you know, but they give it to a great musician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to Korean literature, the poet Koun.
Yeah, he was also part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And a favorite
Yeah.
for many years now. So I wonder about your familiarity with the overall works.
I'm not familiar with his works, really. I don't know whether he's translated into English, is he? I don't know. Yeah.
Translated into English? Very, very little.
Yeah, that's why I'm not familiar with his work. But I'm familiar with the names of those who have been in the running for the Nobel Prize, including Murakami, whom I've never met.
Right.
But I always see his name there, and others, Philip Roth and Joyce Carey Oates and others, they're always there. And Bob Dylan was always there, you know, for many years, yeah.
When you're teaching these days and you're spreading a message to young people, what is the main message that you're trying to send?
Connections. Whenever for every class that I teach, whatever I do, I tell them, if the only thing you get from my class is the idea of connection, then I'm happy, right?
Well, when you say connection, though.
Because I like to see that people realize that phenomena, both in nature and society, are connected. Yeah, that we learn from each other, that any hierarchical relation distorts, you know, what cultures and languages can give to each other. For instance, some of the wealthiest nations in the world come from the West. They are the ones who consume also 90% of the resources of so-called poorer countries, you know. Or put it another way, Africa is the biggest continent in the world because it can contain all the other continents within its mass area, except Australia. Yeah, so virtually the whole of China, India, the whole of Europe, the whole North America can be fit into Africa. So by definition, by reality, Africa has the most resources generally. But Africa is also the poorest continent. How come that can be that the richest continent in the world and the biggest continent in the world, you know, is also the poorest, you know? So one can only assume there's a connection between the poverty or underdevelopment, you know, and overdevelopment, right? Yeah.
If you could recommend one book to our listeners, which book would that be? Only one, though.
Only one.
Only one.
Okay. Instead, I'm going to recommend only one story. Okay, this is my story called the Upright Revolution, and you can Google it. Yeah, I wrote this story in Gikuyu under the title of Itwikare Amurugaro, Kanakregeta Magadumadi Marogie, or in English, the Upright Revolution, or why human beings walk upright. And it's all as a result of an epic fight between arms and legs, because they are cousins. They look alike in so many ways, but also different. There was a time when they had this epic battle as to which was more powerful over the body. And anyway, you can read the rest. But the key thing about this story is that it has now been translated into 54 different languages.
Wow.
40 of them African, 6 European languages, 6 Asian languages, 2 Middle Eastern languages. So I'm very happy with this story. And as I keep on saying, you can Google it up under the title Upright Revolution, and you can read it probably in your own language. And there they also show, if it's not translated into your own language, you can contact the group which is behind the project and to ask to translate it into your own language.
Very nice.
Yeah, right.
And congratulations on that as well. That's a
Yeah,
wonderful accomplishment.
Yeah, that's I feel very happy about.
I bet.
And it's very short. It's a fable.
It's an easy read, that too.
Yes, yeah, right.
So you're going from Korea to Sweden and then back to the United States, back to
Yes,
California?
I am going to the Stockholm Literature Festival. I'm going to that one. And then, in fact, in Stockholm, they've invited me to give the preliminary talk on the Upright Revolution, the drama of this fable.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
yeah,
perfect.
That's why
then.
I'm going there.
That's
right,
perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Well, have you enjoyed your stay in Korea? It's been very short.
I enjoyed meeting the people here. I enjoyed the food. And
What was your favorite Korean dish that you had?
mix?
Okay,
It was
the meat.
which was little things, but by the end of it,
Bibimbap, maybe.
by the end of it, you are so full, right? So they are deceptively small portions.
But you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Yeah.
Professor Ngugi Wa Thiong'o, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning, and thank you for visiting Korea and sharing your story and your literature
Thank you.
with the country. And if you ever come back to Korea, please do come back to Morning Special and say hello.
Oh yeah, I'll come back.
It was a pleasure,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.